The video clip you will see on the screen in a moment was released on Friday, July 25th by the IDF. It shows more than 950 truckloads of food bought and paid for by the United Nations and other humanitarian organizations. The food had been inspected and cleared by the IDF. It had passed through the border checkpoint at 2 locations in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, and it sat there on the staging ground for days, some of it for weeks. It sat rotting in the sun. Why? Well, because UN agencies and others refused to pick up and deliver it to the starving people of Gaza. That sounds crazy, yes? Well, it is. Propaganda? Don't listen to me. Look at the reports of any one of the dozens of international media who were taken by the IDF to see the truckloads of food on Friday, July 25th. On the screen now is the video footage taken by one of those journalists, Yotam Confino, a freelancer whose work has appeared in many international outlets, with biases from left to center to right. And he showed and told the world what he saw, facts, as did many others. We've included a radio interview that Confino did on Friday with the BBC after the filming of this footage. The link is in the podcast notes. Within hours of the IDF video that we opened with going viral, and the foreign press being shown the food, more than 100 truckloads were retrieved by the UN, and the pace continues, according to the IDF spokespeople. Hundreds of truckloads have been moved. The enthusiasm of Western media and governments to unquestioningly accept Hamas information while slicing and dicing any statement from Israel is peculiar, to say the least. And to be clear, I oppose so much about the way in which this war has been conducted and continues. But some things are just black and white. And here's one of those things. Hamas is a brutal Islamist death cult that glorifies martyrdom and has demonstrated for almost 20 years now that it does not care at all about the welfare of civilians under its control. But again, don't take my word for it. In this State of Tel Aviv and Beyond series on food security in Gaza, we speak with and source material from many perspectives, as many perspectives and people as would respond to our queries in a short time. In this episode, I speak with Rev Johnnie Moore, the CEO of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. This is a Delaware-based NGO established in recent months with the full support of America and Israel. It is intended to provide aid to Gazans who need it. And for the 2 months it has been operating on the ground in the Strip, it has attracted more than its share of criticism and controversy. We get into it all with Johnnie Moore today. Johnnie Moore is fierce and focused and pulls no punches in our talk. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, he refuses to meet with Johnnie. So do other senior UN officials. I'm Vivian Berkovich, former Canadian ambassador to Israel. Let's do this. Friday, July 25th. It's about 4:30 in the afternoon in Israel, which makes it about 9:30 in the morning where you are, Reverend Johnnie Moore. Thank you so much for joining State of Tel Aviv today.
Thanks for having me.
I was really pleased that I was able to get you, and especially at this moment. And I'm not that prescient. I didn't know how much this particular moment would hold. But things are really kind of coming to something of a head, and let's hope that leads to good places. But let's start from the beginning, as they say in the Bible. You have been at the helm of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation for, it's 2 months now, correct?
Yeah, just about 2 months.
Okay. And I would say that probably to call it a tumultuous time would be the understatement of the century. Would you agree?
Someone asked me how I would describe the disinformation that we fought, and I said it was basically it's like a state level disinformation campaign. It's like if you had, the United States or Russia or China or, one of the big world powers decide to just throw everything at something. And yeah, it's been tumultuous, not just because of that aspect to it, because of the complexity of operating in the Gaza Strip, because of trying to do something new. It's been an insane couple of months, and yet despite it all, we're pushing 100 million meals
Wow.
delivered in the Gaza Strip.
But it's such an important job. So let's get into some of the guts of the food aid program, such as it is, because there's so much controversy, so much misinformation, disinformation. I frankly don't know the difference. I just work with truth and, untruth. I'm a simple girl. The point of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was to provide food to those who need it in the Gaza Strip. And in effect, bypass, not work with the existing organizations that up until that time had been the primary providers of food aid. And those in particular would be UNRWA, United Nations Relief Works Agency, World Food Program, I suppose, and other smaller organizations. Would you agree with the way in which I've characterized that, or would you modify my comment?
I'd slightly modify it because the goal from the very beginning has been to subsidize the efforts to get food into the Gaza Strip, not to replace anything. It's slightly different with UNRWA, perhaps because of the policy in Israel and in the United States related to UNRWA. I mean, in the United States, UNRWA is now under not just, there are multiple cases working through our courts related to UNRWA, but the Department of Justice in the United States has actually issued an opinion that they don't believe that UNRWA it qualifies for international organizational immunity. So UNRWA is like in a bucket to itself. And even so with UNRWA, I mean, we keep saying if you have 1,000 trucks of food and the Israelis won't let it in, or, we may not be able to collaborate with you directly, but we can deliver your food for sure. And so, our goal from the very beginning has been to collaborate, to subsidize, not to replace, but we have a red line. And the red line is that our food cannot be diverted by Hamas. And we've all seen, anybody that's watched this conflict has noticed these convoys of trucks that are being taken over by Hamas or Hamas-linked armed actors the moment they enter into the Gaza Strip. This has become normative. So we were designed to avoid that problem, which, aside from prolonging this war, this problem also allows Hamas to further repress the people of Gaza. Our mission is not political. A lot of what I just said is observations, based upon, my own experience in the region. Our mission is really simple: feed as many people as we can, as quickly as we can. And so far, we've been able to help half of the people of Gaza, somewhere between 800,000 and a million beneficiaries.
So I'm really glad that you made that correction, because what I'm allowing to seep into the way I asked it and framed it is my knowledge of course, the Israeli government's position with respect to UNRWA. And so your job, as you said it, your role as you see it, is to get food to as many people as possible. And you're not actively cutting anyone out, right?
Exactly. In fact, every single day, I send a letter or someone on our staff issues a statement
Yeah.
begging the United Nations to let us help them get more food. I mean, right now, while we're talking, there are hundreds and hundreds of trucks of food from the UN, not outside of the Gaza Strip, inside actually sitting inside the Gaza Strip. The UN refuses to deliver. And so, we've been saying, like, if you can't do it, we'll do it for you.
So, all right, you jumped ahead on me. I wanted to work up to that, but let's do it since we're there. There was a video that went somewhat viral in the circles in which we travel of 950 plus trucks loaded with food that have passed through the Israeli checks, that sit on the Gaza side of the border, have been cleared for delivery. The food has been ordered, my understanding is, by UNRWA and World Food Program, and there may be others. So I want to clarify this for the listeners because I live here and I've been confused as can be. So what happens is that they order the food supplies well in advance. It's brought into Israel. Israel checks the food to make sure it's actually food and not weapons and other prohibited or dual use materials. And once the inspection has occurred, the food is cleared and it passes through the border crossing into the Gaza Strip. And at that point, UNRWA, World Food Program, will come and retrieve the food supplies and take them for distribution throughout the Gaza Strip. Correct?
Yeah, that's right. So they're staged. The food is staged
Right.
within the Gaza Strip. The problem is the UN's not doing anything. I mean, they're literally letting sitting it rot.
So, I mean, I've been hearing lots of stuff, especially in the last week. And as someone who lives here and I'm seeing these pictures and hearing these stories of starving people, that's my red line. I don't care. It's just too long for those of us who live here. It's too much. It's too long. It's too much suffering everywhere. And we're not getting good information about this. So, I understand, and your staff have sat down with the UN for, you can tell us for how long, what kind of frequency, and that they have not only refused to retrieve the food that they've bought and paid for and it's been cleared, but they've actually publicly been saying that they're not even talking to you guys. What's going on? What's going on, John?
There are a lot of crazy things going on. So first of all, we were basically the whistleblowers on the aid sitting inside the Gaza Strip because we're in the Gaza Strip every single day. And we started noticing this and we started asking questions about this. And by the way, while we're talking here today, after we basically lit up the entire world saying like the UN is saying that there's a boycott on aid going into the Gaza Strip, that there's a blockade of aid going into the Gaza Strip. It's a lie. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trucks of aid. There's enough food in the Gaza Strip to help the people that are in need because there is acute food insecurity in the Gaza Strip. Now, there's also disinformation mixed in that. We see photos from Yemen attributed to, but there is not enough food. There's profound food insecurity. We're every day saying we need more food and we need it. We need it in the Gaza Strip. We think what the UN has been doing, and this is just say my opinion, but I think an informed opinion, is we actually think somehow the UN has been participating in the ceasefire negotiations, not sitting on the side of the international community, but actually sitting on the side of Hamas, because it's in their interest in order to, and it pains me to say this, and I may be totally wrong on this, but it's just too weird that as we look with all this food piled into the Gaza Strip, that the whole messaging from the UN is that there's no food in the Gaza Strip, and then simultaneously there's starvation narrative that's coming from Hamas. Like all disinformation, there's truth inside of it. The truth is there's not enough food in the Gaza Strip. There's acute food insecurity. We have to surge as much food as possible, and that is our position. On the same token, the UN is acting like a political actor, not a humanitarian actor. And when we started blowing the whistle on this, sure enough, in the last 24 hours, all of a sudden UN trucks start moving out of this food that stage. And now they've moved out over 100 trucks of food. So, in an objective world, this would prompt a serious investigation. They would say, like, why is it, that the UN all of a sudden is it because they're disorganized? Is it because they're not as good at doing what they say they are? Is it because they were playing politics? I don't know what it is, but that's what's happened over the last couple of days. We've seen it with our own eyes.
Okay, so you're saying that over the last day or two, more than 100 trucks from that staging area, so more than 100 of the 950 plus, have been moved by the United Nations.
As soon as the pressure started turning up, the political pressure started turning up, all of a sudden the UN found their food again that was sitting within the Gaza Strip. And also, when there was at the UN presser, I noticed, I think it was yesterday, maybe it was this, or it must have been yesterday, a reporter asked, why will the UN not move this food out? And the UN says that they can't get it out securely. And the reporter asked, well, the IDF and others have offered, we're the others, GHF, and this American initiative that is totally supported by the US government, the State Department, the White House, our UN mission. This is a US supported initiative. And the UN says that they refuse to take help in securing their food into the Gaza Strip if it comes from the IDF or if and while they didn't say this in the explicit answer, they've said it to us in various ways. They won't let GHF help get the food in securely. And yes, the UN has this history of allowing the so-called blue police in the Gaza Strip to escort their food into the Gaza Strip. And of course, the blue police are the local Hamas-controlled police. So it's okay for the UN to have Hamas armed actors escort their food into the Gaza Strip, but it's not okay for them to have an independent, American charity with veterans on the ground, U.S. veterans contractors escort their food into the Gaza Strip. The UN is they're contradicting themselves in every direction, and we don't have time for any of this. And I'm critical of the UN. I'm really alarmed by reports that UN convoys were used to move fighters and messages by Hamas over the course of this war. I think you can look at every conflict all around the world, and you can see how the existing humanitarian system prolonged the conflict and helped bad actors. But even despite all my criticisms, over and over and over again, including this very morning, right before we're speaking here, I sent another letter to the UN. We say we don't have time now to work out our differences. We'll put them all aside. We'll figure that out later. Let's work together to feed these hungry people. And every single day we extend our hand, and they reject it. And yet they say they care about these people. And I just become, frankly, more and more cynical that I actually think that a lot of these people aren't humanitarians anyhow. I think they're just plain old politicians.
So when you say, and I'm glad you raised the letters too, your staff was very kind and sent the letter exchanges to me, and of course I'll include them in the podcast notes where you are reaching out. So I know that you've had extensive engagement, shall we say, with UN leadership, and I believe that I don't remember exactly when there was that terrible tragedy when 12 of your aid workers were killed by gunfire, one assumes Hamas gunfire, in the Gaza Strip. But please remind me when that occurred. And you wrote to the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, immediately after that. Would you just recount for us very briefly, please, Johnny, what happened, when it was, and what you wrote to the Secretary General and what he did in response?
At the beginning of June, like right after the beginning of our operations, Hamas found, murdered, and tortured others, by the way, of our local Gazan aid workers. They killed 12 of them. Then they took them to the Al Nasser hospital in Gaza. They piled them in front of the hospital along the deceased and the injured, and refused to allow them medical treatment, to make an example of them. So I immediately wrote a letter to the Secretary General of the United Nations, requested a meeting to discuss our collaboration to help feed the hungry people of Gaza, and asked him to issue a public statement condemning Hamas's murder of our local Gazan aid workers. And it was radio silence for a long time. And then finally, I get an email back from his staff, and they make it clear that he doesn't have time to meet, and he delegated the meeting to Tom Fletcher, who's a senior humanitarian official in the United Nations. I get a letter from Tom Fletcher's staff saying his schedule is too busy to meet, and he delegated it further down into the organization. I wrote Tom Fletcher again just a few days ago, requesting one more time the opportunity to collaborate together, citing our concern about these aid trucks in the Gaza Strip that haven't been delivered, offering to deliver their aid for free. We'll take care of it. We'll get it there. People need the food. There are starving people in the Gaza Strip. There is food insecurity in the Gaza Strip. And so far, we haven't been able to get the meeting. They volunteer dialogue. Okay, but we don't have time for dialogue. Sometimes dialogue is a signal for let's all talk so we can do nothing and take the pressure off. We don't have time for any of that. And in fact, our position, as critical as we have been of the UN, and as critical as they are of us, is to put all of that aside, and let's get in the trenches and help save people together now. We can work out our differences later on. But instead of acting like humanitarian actors, I'm afraid the whole UN system is they're just all behaving like politicians.
So put aside our issues and get the food to the mouths that need it is the bottom.
What could be more important than that? Like, that's their job. That's our job. That's all we want to do. Like, and is the UN going to argue over the nuances of international humanitarian law, which, by the way, we comply with entirely? Okay, we were designed for this purpose. but they want to argue over the nuances of international humanitarian law on the backs of starving children in Gaza. We're not willing to do that. And so what we do is we show up every day and we just keep feeding people.
So I want to now go back in time to when you first started the operation. And there are certain things that were put in place and certain things that were not put in place that I think were problematic. Number one is you had there was confusion initially. Are there two distribution sites? Are there four? Very shortly after launch, you landed on four. I believe there were one or two in the south, one central, and maybe one in the north. Not sure about that. You have four altogether. Where are they located?
Yeah. So at the beginning, and I'll talk about the sort of chaotic scenes in a moment, but right now we have five things going on. So we have four distribution sites, three that are in walking proximity to about 1 million people who are in the south already. One site in the north or in the middle of the Gaza Strip. That's the fourth site. So three in the south, one in the center, and then we have a community distribution effort to take food to particularly to vulnerable people more deeply into the Gaza Strip and including into the north of Gaza Strip. Our plan is to have 8 sites, including sites in the north of the Gaza Strip. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to expand because of resources and because of the disinformation and political issues and all of this. But the plan has always been from the very beginning, to help absolutely everyone. At the beginning, when we first started operating, I mean, the food insecurity was most evident by the desperation of the people to get to our food. But also, it wasn't just that. It's that because the UN opposed us and because Hamas threatened people for getting food from our sites, I think a lot of the people that we were serving, the beneficiaries that we were serving, didn't know if we would show up the next day. And so they were just desperate to get what they could. And one of the mandates I gave very early on is we have, as much as possible, and there are extenuating circumstances, but as much as possible, we have to be there every single day. And so when the 12-day war was happening, when the first missiles started flying in Israel, we surged additional food into the Gaza Strip after midnight that night because we weren't sure what would happen. And then every single day during that war, we continued operating. The UN didn't even try to operate. We continued operating. We kept serving people because we wanted to signal to these people that we would not be intimidated by the UN, not be intimidated by Hamas. We were there for them. And with consistency, we've seen some of the chaos because it is chaotic in the Gaza Strip, but it's chaotic for everybody. When you see one of the rare WFP trucks that makes it in the strip, and you see people piling and grabbing and getting everything they can. These are terrible sites, but they're sites that are indicative of the scale of the problem, and they should motivate all of us to do more. But the UN won't do it with us. Hopefully, that'll change.
Before I let you go, Johnny, I wanted to touch on very briefly one important issue, and that is security. I know that your job is to get the food up, but you're also working with a U.S. company that is providing security at a humanitarian food site. And there have been rounds of live ammo. I'm very unclear as to whose ammunition it is. Is it Hamas? Is it IDF? Is it private security people? What can you tell me to help clarify what's going on? Why are
I'll be as clear as possible. Not a single person has been shot at our distribution sites. Not one. Okay. There have been people that have died over the course of our operation in the Gaza Strip seeking aid. Most of those people have died in proximity to UN distribution sites. There have been a couple of incidents that took place within a kilometer or 2 kilometers outside of our distribution sites. There had been circumstances that involved the IDF, and the IDF is transparent about that. They investigate it. We try to find out what happened. We demand that they adjust the humanitarian corridor, all of these things. But as best as we can tell, there have been far more limited circumstances involving the IDF than there have been involving Hamas. Hamas, and this is the story no one reports, Hamas has intentionally killed probably hundreds of people in order to misattribute those casualties either to the IDF or to GHF, and it fits a pattern. So over the course of the entire war, Hamas, their health ministry or the media office releases a casualty number every day. And that casualty number doesn't distinguish between civilians and militants. Everyone knows that. But what happened when we started operating is they started attributing sometimes all of the casualties to happening within GHF sites. which was just a total fabrication, a lie. And it was meant to try to disincentivize the people of Gaza from getting food from our distribution sites, because Hamas has been able to use the free food of the world to control, to manipulate, to serve their nefarious purposes. And so when some in the media and government officials and UN officials, when they share this disinformation, they're serving not the Gazans. They're actually serving the oppressors of the Gazans, because the people of Gaza have always been the first victims of Hamas, and it's still the case today.
Food has become the ultimate weapon and power in the Gaza Strip. Reverend Johnnie Moore, thank you so much for doing the heavy lifting on this really important and beyond difficult task. The world appreciates your efforts. I certainly do. And thank you for taking so much time to clarify these really important issues. My listeners and readers have been asking for it. That was just really helpful.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a good day. Thanks, as always, for being here. Coming tomorrow, we speak with a senior fellow with the Atlantic Council, Ahmed Al-Khatib, a Gaza native who now lives in the U.S. and has devoted his professional life since October 7th to assisting Gazans. He also openly loathes Hamas, which takes tremendous courage. You may wish to listen to an interview we did recently with Ahmed, which we've included in the podcast notes. Also coming soon is a fascinating discussion with Andrew Fox, former UK military man, prolific writer, and speaker, who has been a brilliant and very even-handed commentator on what's going down in the Middle East. As straight a talker and thinker as you're going to find anywhere. If you do not already do so, please consider supporting our work with a paid subscription. To generate quality coverage requires time, commitment, and yes, money. We are independent, totally, and we rely on the financial support of our listeners and viewers to make our work possible. So please consider an annual or monthly paid subscription to State of Tel Aviv and beyond. Just go to stateoftelaviv.com and take it from there. And starting today, very exciting, you can send us any donation that you consider appropriate to our new Buy Me a Coffee account. You'll find the link on our website, and we've included it on this screen as well. Many of you out there are avid followers of our work. Your support is the best way to show your appreciation. Until next time, stay safe and stay cool. We love hearing from you, so please comment on our website, stateoftelaviv.com, or send us a note to hello@stateoftelaviv.com. On behalf of the State of Tel Aviv core team, Jan Zabo, our creative, graphic, visual, and marketing man, Amir White, producer and editor extraordinaire, sound guy who is also impressively patient with me and my boomer tech deficiencies, and our social media manager who pitches in on everything, Maya Naftalin. Thanks to the team. Thanks to you for being here. We'll be back soon.